Virtual botany students, and today I'm going to be walking you through some of your test review resources. So what I'm going to be doing is show you the study guide. So I will not be posting an answer key for this study guide because it is for you to use on the test, and it is not going to be due, however. So I'm going to be going over the study guide as well as the Kahoot review game, Kahoot review game. So let's go ahead and take a look. The purpose of this review that in class we're going to be doing as you would be doing it at home with a little bit different because we'll be doing the Kahoot as a full class, but you can go ahead and do it as a self-guided game. So the purpose of what we're doing is to prepare for the upcoming assessment and review for our Unit 1 World of Plants test. So remembering some of those objectives that we've learned about in this unit, we want to understand the importance of plants in our natural world and understand plant evolution and basic plant classification. All right, so what we're going to do, this is relevant to the hybrid kids, but what you are going to do is, and we're going to go through our study resources. So first on the study guide, so I've posted this study guide on Google Classroom. I'm actually going to do it right after I'm done making this video. But this study guide, it'll request you to make a copy. So go ahead and make a copy. And this study guide, remember, is the only resource you can use on that test. But it is, comprehensive. It covers everything that would likely appear on that test. So here is the basic outline. We'll say outline of topics included on the test. So make sure you kind of look through these. Now these A through C, D through H, that corresponds to our note guides. Which if we recall, and I can go ahead and bring that up on our note guide, each of our slides has a letter that goes along with it. So if I go and check that out, let's do that. You'll see that living versus non-living is A, what makes a plant is B, so on and so forth. So living versus non-living covers bullet points kind of A through C on that guide, then plant structure and reproduction. It's all labeled with a title on those notes though. So the study guide and our test is going to cover class notes. All of these sections, remember our quiz just covered the first two, but now our test is going to cover all 4 notes presentations. Then it's going to cover the importance of plants article, which essentially there's only really going to be one question geared to that one, and it's going to be regarding what are the big resources, what are the 4 key resources that plants provide for us and provide to society. And then there will be a couple of questions just in general on mother-in-law's tongue, plant as well as aloe vera, some general info, where they're from, kind of what conditions do they like, and we've covered those in previous note presentations. So it won't be anything too specific to them, but just some general info about them. All right, so now if we think about our study questions, essentially what I've done here is I've broken down each section into what are the key questions that might be on the test that you might have to answer. So while you wouldn't have to list characteristics in a Google form, you're going to want to go ahead and know what the 7 characteristics of life were, recalling that you can find this in your living versus non-living section from your notes. So which of the following are characteristics of all life, so on and so forth. And a lot of these questions are actually going to appear in the Kahoot game. So you can get the answers from them by playing that Kahoot game. And I'm going to go ahead and walk you through that entire Kahoot just because you're not getting it in class. So I want to make sure that you have the ability to test yourself and you see what those answers are as well as those who are in class. So this whole section 1 through 4 corresponds to the living versus non-living, the first day of notes. Then we get into our plant structure and reproduction notes. So I want you to be able to know what these vegetative structures are. There will likely be questions about them, similar to something like this. Which of the following is not a vegetative structure? And if you're doing this online, you can go ahead and bold your answers. However, I do want to say, because you are virtual, you won't be able to have this open as a separate tab unless you had like a whole different computer where you could look at your study guide and then look at the test. But I would recommend printing off a copy of this so that you can look at it while taking your lockdown browser test in Google Forms. So we keep going on with our plant structure and reproduction. So some questions that really correspond to the notes there, and expect to see a couple questions regarding this figure. So make sure that you reference your notes and you're able to fill in that figure. All right. You can also find that one online if you happen to miss it. All right, so make sure that you understand that. Plant evolution. This is the new stuff that we did not cover on the first quiz. So make sure you understand those 4 major evolutionary developments as we saw them in this figure. So be able to know what the development is, what group it happened with, and then I gave you examples here because there might be a question or two on the test regarding, like, a fern is an example of what. So I'm really giving you kind of some of this background information. Then it will ask you which was the first group to do each of these in its corresponding year. You don't have to know the years for these, but I do want you to know the group and the development as I had up here. These are just kind of some multiple choice versions of what you might see. You might see this figure, maybe a fill in the blank, like what was the development here, or what was it here, so on and so forth. Monocots, dicots, we didn't spend a whole lot of time on this in class, so you likely won't see a whole ton on it, but I want you to know what is a cotyledon. So recall your notes. Embryonic seed leaf. How many cotyledons does a monocot have? How many does a dicot have? And then give an example of each. And we'll see this in the Kahoot game in a few minutes. All right, be able to fill out this diagram that we had in the notes. So make sure that you're able to fill out that diagram, differentiating between, which is which. That was in the lecture video. I filled that in for you, if you recall. So make sure you can identify perhaps that the leaf venation of a dicot is net-like versus parallel, so on and so forth. And really the only question you can expect to see from the importance of plants section is going to be knowing these 4 basic needs. So expect to see a question on that. And then a couple brief questions on mother-in-law's tongue and aloe vera. How did we propagate it? What method did we use to propagate both mother-in-law's tongue and aloe vera? Because it was the same method. So recall that. We did cuttings. So where is aloe vera from? What conditions does it prefer? Where is mother-in-law's tongue plant from? What conditions does it prefer? So, all right, that is going to be the study guide. That's all you'll be able to use on the test. So let me jump into the self-guided Kahoot, and let me show you. So you'd be able to find the link for this on Classroom on the test review resources post in your announcements. So you'd be able to find it here. I'm right about to post this, so you'll be able to see it in your stream. So you'll click the link, play Kahoot, and instead of a whole class version, which obviously, it's always fun to be able to do it as a whole class, but logistically it would be kind of tough from remote learning. So Kahoot has a resource that you can actually take it on your own and quiz yourself. So I would greatly recommend that. All right, so say your name is David, which mine happens to be. You will then be able to take it on your own, right? So I'm going to go through, and I would be giving feedback to your classmates, your hybrid classmates. So I'm going to go ahead and go through. So let's think about this. Which of the following are characteristics of all life? All right, so we got a timer here. So make sure that you remember movement was not one of them, and breathing or respiration is also not one of them, but either of these would work, right? And notice, so I have number 2 written here. So essentially this is number 2 on the study guide. So you can go ahead and use your answers here, which I would recommend you doing, and then you fill in on the study guide, which of the following are characteristics of all life. So you could go ahead and bold response to stimuli and reproduction. So that kind of allows you to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak, that as we complete the Kahoot, you can be following along and filling out that study guide, which is great because, I don't get to go through it with you, so I want to make sure that you kind of understand where some of those answers are coming from. And our test is going to be very similar to the study guide you're going to find. All right, next up, doesn't really matter how many points I have. Number 2, which of the following characteristics describe the plant kingdom? Number 3 in that same section of your study guide. Which of the following characteristics? So they're definitely not single-celled, so they're not like bacteria. However, they are multicellular, eukaryotic, and able to perform photosynthesis. So on a Google form, this might come up as a checkbox, but right here, there's no way to, pick multiple answers. But either of these 3 would work. Single-celled would not work, however. And if you check number 3, it's the exact same as what that question was. So I made it that way intentionally. All right, next up, number 3. Which of the following best describes the concept of propagation? Number 4 in that same section. All right, running experiments to test the factors responsible for plant growth. That's more so an experiment. Buying plants from a garden center. That's more so just obtaining whole new plants. Taking care of existing plants. That's not propagation, but it's going to be this one. Using one plant part to make a new plant part, like when we used leaf cuttings from mother-in-law's tongue and aloe vera to start growing new plants in class. So that is propagation, making new plants from existing parts of other plants. All right. 4 out of 20. Which of the following is not a vegetative structure? So this is number 2 in the next section. So this is number 2 in this section. All right, so let me go back so I don't miss the answer. Which is not a vegetative structure? So a cotyledon is definitely not a vegetative structure. It is a plant structure we talked about in our monocots, dicots. It's an embryonic seed leaf. All right, so tubers are vegetative structures. They hold nutrients. Rhizomes are vegetative structures. They allow for new growth and propagation horizontally away from where the original plant is. And the same with runners. Runners and rhizomes are very similar. Okay, so that's number 4. All right, I'm unopposed. You're going to notice you'll see other students' scores who did this self-guided one, so that you can track how you're doing as compared to other virtual students. A potato is an example of which vegetative structure? Mr. Potato Head. All right, number 3 on your study guide it will be, and it is going to be a tuber. So that one you can recall from your notes. However, if you fill out this section, let me go back, based on your notes, you would perhaps have tuber, nutrient storage, and potato. Potato would be a great thing to put there. So, and all that references back to what your notes were. You took notes on these and you took notes on examples of these. So that should be fairly straightforward completing that. And notice that was number 3 on this section. So I couldn't number them all kind of 1 through 20. I had trouble doing that. So I just went ahead and numbered them each separately in each section. All right, so number 6, which of the following statements best describes the difference between sexual and asexual reproduction? Okay. All right, so this one requires a little more reading. So sexual involves exact cloning. I know that's not true. Sexual is practiced by animals, while asexual is practiced by plants. No, plants can produce sexual reproduction. Asexual requires pollinators, not correct, so it's going to be this one. All right, so we are on a roll here. Well, I'd better be getting these right, because otherwise that would not be good. So, if we recall from our notes, sexual reproduction involves the fusion of 2 different gendered gametes. This exact question was also on the quiz, so if you missed it on the quiz, make sure that you get it right the next time around, if it is indeed on the test. Sexual, fusion of different gendered gametes. Asexual is cloning. We've only done propagation via asexual, so we haven't done any sexual propagation. But you could, if you were, say, to take pollen from the male anther and put it in the female pistil structure, you could. And that is also what Gregor Mendel, the guy who invented genetics, actually did. He did that a lot, called cross-pollinating. Okay, moving on. Number 7, what is the main biological purpose of sexual reproduction? So as opposed to asexual reproduction. So what is the advantage of it? To bring individuals together, not necessarily to create a population of individuals poorly adapted to their environment. Certainly wouldn't want to make them poorly adapted. To allow disease to wipe out many individuals, no, that's not what nature would favor. But it is to increase genetic diversity, which in turn prevents disease. It keeps the population from being wiped out or from being poorly adapted. This was also a quiz question, so make sure that you're following along here. This is number 5 in the section on structure and reproduction, which is right here. So be sure that you can honestly get prepared for your test just by doing this and filling out your study guide with each question. So feel free to pause this after you do each question. I'm racking up points, not that I'm really being compared to many people right now. Which was the first group of plants to live on land? All right, so this is question number 2 in our section on plant evolution. So right here. So let's take a peek. All right, first group is going to be our mosses or our bryophytes, if we recall from our notes on plant evolution. And the others come after them. So you don't have to memorize the years. You're not going to have to memorize 470 million years ago for the test. But you are going to have to perhaps, memorize, bryophytes, first land plants, so on and so forth. And we'll talk about the other ones as they come. All right, number 9. Which was the first group of plants to develop vascular tissue starting 420 million years ago? This one's number 3 in the section on plant evolution. So right here. All right. So after the bryophytes comes the seedless vascular plants. You'll know this because they are called vascular plants. So they are the first ones to have vascular tissue. This xylem and this phloem that we talked about in our plant structure video, or I should say plant evolution video. All right, so they are the first plants to have that, and they evolved 420 million years ago. All right, carrying on. We're into our second half of our quiz. Which was the first group of plants to develop seeds starting 390 million years ago? So we've already ruled these out, so it's one of these. So gymnos means naked. So naked seed is what gymnosperm means. And the first ones to develop seeds, who are the second most recent, are the gymnosperms. So that's going to be question number 4. So you could go ahead and go through and bold gymnosperms just so you have it to reference on your test on Friday. And recall that you guys are taking the test on Friday, the same day as the cohort B students. You've got between 8 and 4 to do so. So plenty of time. Take your time on it. All right. Number 11 is going to be which was the first group of plants to develop flowers? All right. So once again, referencing your study guide, this question. All right, so we've eliminated these 3, and the last one left is the angiosperms, which a sunflower is a type of angiosperm, okay? The angiosperms are by far the newest plant group in terms of evolution. They evolved only about 130 million years ago, whereas the gymnosperms were a lot earlier than that, okay? So be filling out that study guide. 12. What is a cotyledon? Now we are into a new section. We are in the monocots dicots section. So what is it? It's not a root structure. It's not a vegetative structure that we talked about. Not a perennial plant. It is an embryonic or baby seed leaf, right? And if you're looking for where this is in your study guide, it would be monocots dicots. These I don't have as multiple choice just to save space so we could get this onto 6 pages. So make sure you can type in as you go. Embryonic or baby seed leaf, so on and so forth. I would do that. Definitely do that as we're going through. Okay. Next up, 13. How many cotyledons does a monocot have? Give an example. Here's a typo. Give an example of a monocot. All right, so prefix mono, recall, means one. So we're going to rule out all of our twos right here. Then we have to think about, this is a little bit of memorization, but we know our tomato is a dicot because I said it in an earlier video. And so our grains like wheat are going to be monocots. So if you know the grains are monocots and our legumes and tomatoes are dicots, that should help you narrow it down. All right. How many cotyledons does a dicot have? Give an example of a dicot. Okay, so di prefix means two. So it's not going to be either of these, wheat or rice. Those are grains. And it's not going to be two wheat because wheat is a grain, which only, so all grains are monocots. So we're going to have to be left with this one, two tomato. The tomato is a dicot, two cotyledons. All right. Continuing on, now this question correlates to our importance of plants section of our study guide. According to the article, what are the 4 basic needs provided by plants? This was also on our quiz, so make sure you get it right this time. So we don't get water from plants, we get food, we definitely get shelter, we definitely get clothing, and we get oxygen. We don't get minerals necessarily, we don't get carbon dioxide. Plants help to remove carbon dioxide and absorb it from the atmosphere. So we don't get it from plants. We get oxygen, clean air that we breathe. That's why it's good to have a lot of trees around, right? Okay? So based on this, you can go ahead and type in your 4, for example, food, so on and so forth, just so you have that to reference. Okay? Next up. Only a couple more questions. I have a couple brief survey questions at the end to see how you're doing. Where is the mother-in-law's tongue plant from, and what conditions does it prefer? All right, so this is one you're going to kind of have to remember, but you can use the context clues to kind of narrow it down. Does this look like a plant that would grow in Russia in a frigid climate? Definitely does not. Also doesn't really look like a plant that would grow in a really dry climate. So the only option that's wet is West Africa, where it is actually from. And we talked about that in a prior slideshow, the informational mother-in-law's tongue plant slideshow, right? Okay. So, and if you're looking for where that is on the study guide, you can fill it in right there, as well as the other 2 that will follow. All right, so the scoreboard, number 17. Where is the aloe vera plant from? What conditions does it prefer? So it's definitely not going to want wet conditions, so we can rule these out. And if we recall, there is a variety of aloe vera that can grow in Australia, but it's originally from the Middle East. It's from the Middle East. So I would go back, make sure you have watched those aloe general planting videos. The aloe general video told you about that. So that's the only kind of more so knowledge-based question I'd like you to know on the aloe itself, right? And 18, what method did we use to propagate both mother-in-law's tongue and aloe vera? So this one comes from those planting demonstrations. So what did we do? We did not plant seeds. We did not use roots, offsets, though I said that might be more successful for the aloe. We didn't graft stems together. This wouldn't really be relevant for those plants. We did, however, do leaf cuttings, a very simple method of propagation. So make sure, you could go ahead and put leaf cutting down here just so that you have it for the test, right? Make sure that following along, and that is the last question on the study guide. So you shouldn't have a whole lot of that study guide left after completing this, after going through the Kahoot. All right? Last two questions are survey questions. Rate the difficulty of this unit so far. So this is whatever you'd like. I would give it maybe a 2 because, I gave you a lot of resources, but, plant memorization stuff can be hard. We had that flower diagram in there that you're going to want to know, so make sure that, that can add some difficulty. Last question. Rate your confidence on the upcoming Unit 1 test. All right, least confident, most confident. There are no wrong answers here. I'm going to say I'm going to get A++ on this one. So I'd better, as the teacher, do well on this test. But feel free. Honest assessment, I just use that to kind of see how we're, as a check-in for how we're doing. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this Kahoot. Hope you enjoyed it. So once again, where this is posted, it's going to be posted on your classroom stream as well as info about the test. You virtual folks will take it on Friday between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. So make sure you do that. There won't necessarily be a late penalty per se for taking the test late, but it really benefits you to do this on time, because then otherwise you're cutting into your time that you could be spending on other work, essentially. So, and we don't want you to get behind so that you're missing work. And that's another note. So in addition to studying for this test, make sure you catch up on missing work. I sent out a progress report last week. And remember, you can still get 60% even if it's late. So I've been pretty lenient on late grades, but my lenience will be running thin as we go forward, and you've had plenty of time to do stuff. This week, there are no assignments per se. So on this week of the botany calendar, you will see a link to the study guide. It's not due, but it's the only thing that you can use on the test. Our test is 90 points, a massive part of your grade. 3 times the largest grade so far, 3 times the quiz. The link will also be posted here for the Unit 1 test. It'll become active as when the test is open. Right now it will not be open. Here's reminders of when you take the test, and here is that Kahoot link if you would like to take it again, for example. Okay, everybody, I think that will cover the review stuff. I apologize for the lengthy video, but as virtual folks, I wanted to give you a good briefing on what's happening with our test. All right, well, I will see you guys later then. Talk to you later. Have a great day and good luck studying for that test. Make sure you read this post in its entirety. Bye.